I remember their shoes first. Scuffed leather, dusty from the road, laced carefully, like they still believed in order, even after everything. But they didn't look like they belonged here. Not in our town. Not on our streets. I was maybe 13 when they arrived. My mother told me not to stare, but how could I not? We'd never seen women like them up close. They had an unfamiliar quiet about them. Not fear, more like caution. Some of them looked barely older than me. Others had the faces of people who'd lived too many lives in too little time. And none of them wore chains. That's what everyone noticed first. They came off the bus calmly, carrying small bags or nothing at all, their eyes adjusting to the light, the space, the silence. You could hear the whispers all around us. Where are the guards? Why aren't they cuffed? Are they really prisoners? Mr. Dan from the feed store leaned against the doorframe and muttered, "Well, that's not what I expected." No one answered. Because no one quite knew what to say. They were here to help, that's what we were told. To work at the cannery for the season. To fill the gaps left by the war. To clean, sort, pack, and label. They weren't here as enemies, exactly. But not as guests either. Just, somewhere in between. My mother stood beside me as we watched them walk past. "They're just people," she said softly, maybe to herself more than to me. And she was right. That's what struck me most. They didn't look like anything I'd imagined. Not harsh or angry. Just tired. One of them, I still remember, held her coat closed tight like she was protecting something small and invisible inside. She glanced at me. Just for a second. Not with a smile. Not with a glare. Just looked. And I knew, even as a child, that this moment would stay with me for the rest of my life. They worked hard that summer. At the cannery, they washed produce, sorted jars, and packed crates from dawn to dusk. They never complained. And over time, people stopped staring so much. A few even nodded as they passed. The way you do when someone becomes part of the rhythm of your town. They didn't speak our language. Not much. But sometimes they hummed. Quiet, low melodies. Songs that didn't need translation to feel like memories. One afternoon, I walked past the fence behind the cannery. They were on break, sitting in the shade, sipping water, brushing dust off their clothes. And there she was, the one who had looked at me. Her hair was tied back, her face calm, her hands moving carefully as she relaced her shoes. I couldn't explain why, but something inside me shifted. Not because of anything she said. But because of how normal she looked. How human. And that changed something in me. That night, I asked my mother at dinner. "Do you think any of them are good?" She paused, her fork still in the air. Then she said something I've never forgotten. "I think the world's more complicated than we know. And people are never just one thing." Years later, I found a photo in a box at the library. Black and white. Faded. A group of women in work clothes, standing behind the cannery. And there she was. Still not smiling. But no longer a stranger. On the back of the photo, in pencil, someone had written. Summer 1945. They walked into town without chains. And left something behind we didn't expect. Understanding. I never learned her name. That still bothers me. I've remembered her face for over 70 years. But never knew what to call her. To me, she was always the girl with the green ribbon. That second week of August, I saw her again, not behind the cannery fence this time, but at the town square, standing near the bench by the fountain. She was alone. No guards. No one watching her, really. Just her. In a faded blue dress, hands folded, and that same calm look she wore when she first stepped off the bus. The green ribbon was tied in her hair, knotted carefully. I remember thinking, she still makes time to be neat. To feel like herself. That mattered to me, even if I didn't understand why. I stood there, holding my bicycle by the handlebars, frozen. And then something odd happened. She smiled. Not big. Not forced. Just a quiet, gentle curve of the mouth. A kind of permission. I walked over. Didn't say anything at first. Just sat a few feet away on the edge of the bench, pretending to look at the pigeons. She didn't move. For a moment, it felt like I was sitting beside a storybook, something magical and off-limits. Then she turned slightly and said, softly, "You're not afraid of me?" The accent was strong. The words, careful. I shook my head. She smiled again, and for the next few minutes, we just sat. That silence, I still remember it better than most conversations I've had since. Eventually, I said the only thing I could think of. "Do you miss home?" She looked down. Then nodded. "Do you have family there?" I asked. She hesitated. Then held up 2 fingers. A gesture. Not a word. She didn't know how to say more. I didn't push. Instead, I pulled a wrapped caramel from my pocket and offered it to her. She blinked, surprised. Then took it like it was the kindest thing she'd ever been given. "Danky," she whispered. And that was it. A shared piece of candy between 2 girls who should have never met. But somehow, did. I never told my parents about that moment. Not because I was ashamed. But because I didn't want to hear all the reasons I shouldn't have done it. By then, people were already talking. Some folks didn't like the idea of those women walking freely. Didn't like how they worked without chains. Didn't like how human they looked. But no one ever said it out loud. Not directly. They just watched. Whispered. Turned away. And I, for the first time in my life, began to question what I'd been taught to feel. After that, I saw her 2 more times. Once, walking back from the store with a paper bag in her arms. And once, in church, way at the back, standing quietly, not singing, just listening. Each time, she nodded at me. Each time, my heart did something I still can't explain. Then, one morning, they were gone. No notice. No farewell. Just an empty bus stop and silence behind the cannery. The summer ended like a skipped page. And the girl with the green ribbon became a memory. Years later, I read somewhere that most of the women sent to towns like ours went back to their country with nothing. No money. No home. Just the clothes they arrived in and whatever kindness, or cruelty, they'd been shown. I often wonder what she remembered about me. If she told anyone about the girl with the caramel. Or if I was just another passerby in a world that had already tried to forget her. I hadn't planned on going back. The town felt like a past version of myself, a place I'd outgrown and carefully tucked away. But after Mom passed, I had to return. The house needed to be emptied, the papers signed, the garage cleared of 20 years of "I'll get to that someday." Funny how a whole life can be boxed up in a weekend. It was Sunday afternoon. I'd finished sorting through a stack of old cookbooks when I found it, a long, narrow box tucked behind a row of canning jars in the pantry. I don't even know why I opened it. Maybe because it wasn't labeled. Maybe because it felt like something no one else was meant to find. Inside, a small bundle of newspaper clippings, 2 Polaroids, and a sealed envelope. Yellowed. Fragile. Forgotten. And folded inside one of the clippings, was her face. The photo was faded. Black and white, but the tones were warm. It was a group picture, a row of young women standing outside the cannery, some squinting into the sun. One woman stood slightly off to the side, not touching anyone. Her hair pulled back. A familiar calm in her posture. The girl with the green ribbon. I didn't breathe for a moment. There she was. After all these years. No name, no context, just captured light and time on old paper. The back of the photo said, "Work detail, 1945, cannery lot." I traced her outline with my finger, gently. As if touching it too hard might erase her entirely. The next day, I went to the local library. They'd remodeled since I'd last been, added air conditioning, coffee machines, computer terminals. But the archive room was still downstairs, still full of dust and silence. The librarian, a kind woman named Beth, helped me pull a box marked "Wartime, Local Community." Inside, photos, documents, a few journal excerpts from townsfolk who had kept detailed records. And then I found it. A handwritten letter, and signed, from the summer of 1945. A woman describing her experience working at the cannery. Her English was broken, but soft, careful, the way someone writes when they're afraid of being misunderstood. A sentence stopped me cold. I look at the girl with the candy and she is not afraid. My heart stuttered. Could it be? I reread the line 3 times. The girl with the candy. That was me. She had remembered. I sat in the archive room long after the sun dipped behind the hills. And in that quiet, I realized something. What I had taken as a brief summer memory, a fleeting kindness, had lived in her, too. For decades, I'd wondered if I'd imagined it. If that caramel meant anything. If she ever thought of me. And now, I knew she had. On my last day in town, I walked the path behind the old cannery. The building itself was long gone, replaced by a row of senior apartments. But the fence line was still there, overgrown now, tangled with ivy and thyme. I stood near the spot where I'd seen her sitting once. Where we'd exchanged a glance, a candy, and an unspoken understanding. And I let myself feel it all again. The confusion. The curiosity. The connection. I don't know what happened to her. I may never know. But I believe she lived. That she made it home. That somewhere, maybe far from here, she carried the memory of a small American town that didn't chain her. That let her walk free. That let 2 girls, for just a moment, see each other beyond history. Some stories don't need an ending. They just need to be remembered. And now, I've remembered. I returned home with the photo tucked inside a book, one my mother used to keep by the kitchen window, pages dog-eared and stained with time. I don't know why I chose that book. Maybe because it smelled like her. Maybe because it felt like it would keep the memory warm. I didn't show the photo to anyone right away. Didn't mention the letter I'd found. Didn't say her name, mostly because I still didn't know it. But I kept thinking about her. The girl with the green ribbon. And about how some moments from childhood don't fade, they only grow quieter, like a radio you forget is still playing softly in the background. A few nights later, I found myself in the attic again. The boxes hadn't moved. The light bulb still flickered like it was tired of being asked to do its job. I sat down on the old trunk near the back, the one that still smelled like cedar and lemon polish. That's when I found the tin. Just a little silver container, no label, no lock, no reason to notice it. Inside were a few buttons, a broken brooch, and a handful of postcards. Most were blank. One had a drawing of a mountain on it. Another had a painting of a cathedral. But the one on top was different. Postmarked 1946. No return address. I turned it over. And there it was, in careful handwriting. Dear friend. I do not know your name. But I remember you. I remember the sweet. And your eyes. I was afraid then. I am not afraid now. Thank you for not looking away. H. No other explanation. Just that. A whisper across time. I held that card to my chest for a long time. Long enough to feel something loosen inside me. She had remembered. That small moment, a caramel, a glance, hadn't vanished into the noise of the world. It had stayed with her, the same way it stayed with me. And somehow, across all those years and miles, she had sent something back. Even if no one ever read it. Even if no one ever answered. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote my own letter. Not to her. To myself, really. To the girl I had been that summer, the one with the awkward braid and the curiosity no one could quite tame. You were brave, I wrote. You didn't even know it, but you were. You chose kindness without knowing whether it was allowed. And maybe that changed more than you'll ever see. I folded it up and placed it next to the postcard. Then I made a cup of tea and let the silence speak. A week later, I went back to the library. Beth was working the front desk again, sorting returns and humming something soft under her breath. I handed her a folder. Inside were the photo, the postcard, and my own written memory. She looked up. Are you sure? She asked. You could keep these. I have, I said. For long enough. We walked together to the archive room. She made space in the display case near the back, the one marked Community Stories. The one people usually passed without stopping. As she arranged the items, I saw the photo again, the girl with the green ribbon, standing just slightly apart from the others, not smiling, not frowning, just present. That's when I finally said it. She walked into our town without chains. But she carried the weight of the world in her eyes. Beth nodded. Didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Later, I walked the edge of the town square. It's changed, of course. The cannery's long gone. The old fountain's been replaced. The benches are newer, but they're still in the same places. I sat on one of them, near the tree that had always leaned a little too far left. And I closed my eyes. For a moment, I could hear it all again, the hum of factory fans, the creak of worn shoes on pavement, the soft rustle of a ribbon in the wind. And the quiet between two girls who had nothing in common. Except humanity. You see, people think history is written by generals and politicians. But I think it's written by people like her. And by the ones who remember them. By those who offered a piece of candy instead of fear. A smile instead of silence. A place to sit, even if no one else would have allowed it. Somewhere, I hope she's still alive. Or was. I hope she had children. Or peace. Or music. I hope she told someone, someday, about that strange summer in a small American town, where she expected chains and got something else instead. And I hope she knew that I remembered her. Always.